Hey everyone, this is Tony Holbein from Growblogs. You are listening to The Revenue Formula with Mikkel and Tony. In today's episode, we are discussing why BI sucks, the problem with it, and trust me, there are many, why people do get it in the first place, and what to consider instead. Enjoy.
You know, the intelligent listeners, which is all of them, will have noticed that it's been a while since we've had guests on the show. We've been having a bit of a summer break, which we also need, and so have the guests, to be quite frank. So I'm happy to say that soon they're going to be back.
Season 2.
Soon they're going to be back.
It's about to start.
I can already say now that a few of the ones we've had on the show, solid conversations. Wes Bush, not so long ago.
Yep.
Solid conversation on PLG. I think it's going to be a really good season.
I think it's going to be an average season.
I wonder what the IMDb score is going to be. Do you want to talk about the weekend or shall I?
I mean, you shall, please.
So last time we recorded, I was basically telling you about me being a lumberjack. I don't know if it made the episode or not, but me chopping down
You
trees.
chopped some trees. It doesn't make you a lumberjack.
Some trees. No, that's true. I mean, I'm not going to put it on the LinkedIn just yet.
Yeah.
Not yet. Let's see. Maybe I get an endorsement first. So my in-laws invited us to Sweden to paint the entire house.
Oh, now you paint as well.
So now I'm a painter as well.
There is a way out of marketing, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
There is another career
progression. That's good. And I mean, the thing is, you figure out what you're good at and what you really suck at.
Yeah.
And, you know, especially with paint, it can be very gratifying to see like, oh, now it looks so much better. But if you mess it up, it's also like the problem's going to be very visible. And so that's kind of what I spent the time on. We were just painting, and it was actually, I want to say
20
7,
kids?
yeah,
20 kids.
Let's say 20 kids, all under age of like 6, being involved with painting.
Great.
So we were 2 parents just overseeing them not being able to paint, and just basically had a section of the house that's lost. Maybe we need to just take down that part of the house and put up new wood boards or something.
The funny thing about painting is, you know, you sometimes have this romantic idea of like, you know, we're going to just go and maybe with some friends over, beer and some pizza.
Yeah.
And then you just stand there until 10 p.m. and you grind and you look at the corner. It's like, is the corner, is it the same color? And you just keep you know, painting it again and again. And it's like, no, I'm not going to do this.
That's true. So, segue.
Yeah,
that kind of
interested about that.
That kind of sucked. No, it was good fun, honestly. But it's kind of like I said, you can really see all the mistakes. And what are we using to see mistakes at SaaS companies?
Well, I don't know.
You don't know.
What is it we're using?
Well, we're using a whiteboard. So, you know, don't listen to our
We're
advice.
just using our eyes, actually.
Don't do what we're doing. Do what we're telling you to do. That's the case here. No, for a lot of businesses, we had a spreadsheet plotting in numbers from multiple systems. And then what happens when you pull numbers from 3-4 different tools is they don't add up anymore. You calculate out the funnel and it's like, well, this math is just broken. So, you know, that was kind of the challenge and was a catalyst to say, well, we need to get some visibility into how we're performing. And the immediate solution was like, you know what? BI. Let's do BI.
That's it.
And by accident or that sheer dumb, idiotic comment, we started a multi-year project, burning a lot of cash to start that endeavor. And that's probably what we're going to get a bit into today, the whole BI.
And the world divides into maybe 2 or 3 different areas. People that haven't invested yet into BI, people that are thinking about it, and then people that have.
Yeah, who will never do that.
and just listen to the latter part here.
Yeah.
No, but we're probably going to cover kind of the perspectives on those 3 different areas today.
Yeah.
And going a little bit through this, I think rolled out BI 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Lots of pain stuff to share.
Yeah.
And also kind of just thinking back, what's really the reason to kind of roll out BI, right? What do you really want to achieve? At least from a commercial perspective, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to cover all the other reasons, but from a commercial perspective, what do you want to achieve? And kind of taking a little bit of a deep dive into this topic today.
So maybe I can start with the most crazy stat I've found around this subject.
Oh, yeah.
From Gartner. So it's something like 80 to 85% of all BI implementations fail. Just let that sink in for a moment.
I was like, really difficult to roll out BI. Let's just be clear about this. This is one of the massive downsides of BI.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, we're almost talking only one out of 10 installations works out. It's not the other way.
And
It's
you know
like,
what?
1 out of 10, it doesn't work out. No. 1 out of
Yeah.
10 is the positive event. you know?
And you know what? It made me wonder. It's like, okay, did it fail because they couldn't get it to work, or because they just realized how massive it was and they just gave up?
We should call up Gartner and ask them.
No, so the other thing is also like, this was cited in, I want to say 2018 or something. Mysteriously, it's disappeared from the Gartner website. It is a bit of a side comment. I just wonder if they were called up by a few of, vendors
the vendors that are paying them a lot of money.
Yeah, in the top right corner who were leading something. And then it's like, you know what? If we need to keep this engagement going, maybe take that down. Anyway, doesn't take away from the fact that it is a complex implementation, right? And it is super expensive. And I was hoping maybe you could just paint a picture of how expensive. What are we talking about
It depends a little bit on, what you think is expensive, right? But many of us probably put it into perspective of, hey, I'm going to buy a new tool. And people have in their minds buying a new tool in our range. So I'm not saying enterprise and up, but like up until the 100 million or so.
Yeah.
I think they're thinking about a new tool, a new analytics tool, by the way, like 20 to 50K.
Yeah.
Something like this. And this I think it makes total sense. And obviously then you have your heavy seed usage, like an outreach and so forth, kind of that, obviously is a little bit more expensive than that. But that's what people think of. Well, if you think about BI, you actually might get a Looker or Tableau license done in that range, the 20 to 50K range. Depends on how many users you need and bells and whistles. And I don't know their pricing sheet, but it's usually in that range.
Yeah.
Right? What many people on the face of it are kind of missing. This is when we bought Looker in 2016 or 17 or something like this. Well, number one, you need Looker.
yeah, of course.
Right? And I think this was back then 36K or something like this. But you don't only need Looker, you also need a pipelining tool, Fivetran. We went for Fivetran. Fivetran is the massive winner in this whole thing. And it depends on your use and how many managed and active rows you need and stuff. I don't know. But you're talking 10 to 15K, for that thing on top, right? You will need something like DBT, which is, I think, for free in most cases, actually. But I haven't actually covered the really expensive part yet.
Yeah, come to it. Let the shoe drop now.
The really expensive part is whatever you do, you will need someone that knows how to do that stuff, right? You will need and I'm not talking a business analyst or something like this.
No.
Maybe your RevOps can do the business analyzing, but you need kind of not an engineer, but people refer to it now as a data engineer.
Yeah.
Basically someone that can write SQL and can stitch all of the different pieces together, right?
Yeah.
And those folks, because they need to have both very technical skills and also commercial understanding. Those folks, they're not, they're pretty rare actually. They're not everywhere. And you easily pay 100 plus K for them. And it depends on where in the world you are, but that's usually what you end up paying for those folks, right? And you could go for like an only SQL person, but then you would need to realize that someone on the team needs to spend half their time working with that SQL person to do the defining and the explaining and all of that stuff. And you'll probably end up paying more even. Right?
Yeah.
So really kind of touching 150K or something like that, right?
Jesus.
And this is the bare minimum setup cost.
And I think the other funny thing is most companies are also up to go for, let's speed up this project and get some consultants as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, the cost can kind of balloon really quickly.
Yeah.
I think the other side of the coin kind of in terms of the rollout piece is really, it's usually not, it's not Looker, Fivetran or the data engineer that messes this up. So people might wonder kind of why are those rollouts not working out? Well, the reason it's not working out is actually because you fail to get consensus on what metrics mean in your business. That's a big problem. So you connect to your Salesforce and your Marketo and so forth, you pull data and you have all the data, it's all there. But for this to then be usable by a marketing leader or a sales leader or someone else, you need to make sure that what they think, the dead horse that we keep beating, kind of what an MQL is and how it's being defined and what that means. And it's so funny because obviously this is very much our turf also sometimes. And when we're walking into usually the implementation where we're kind of doing the heaviest of lifts, where this is instead of a 1 or 2 week project turns into a month project, which we're kind of saying, hey, it's going to take a month.
Yeah.
Is actually we didn't realize we didn't agree on all of those definitions. Actually.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of that's a typical one. And then if you take this up a notch, and I'm now talking kind of $1 billion revenue company with like lots of different entities, basically they're trying now for the 10th year in a row to roll out BI.
Yeah.
And it's simply not happening because you have so many little kingdoms and fiefdoms,
Yeah,
and everyone is like, wants to make it their little special way, and then it cannot be changed. Sometimes if you want to change a metric definition, this then might mean that comes with a change in your commission plan for someone, change in targets, change of not only tooling, but processes and stuff. Like impossible.
You know what? I was also thinking about the objection that's going to be, oh, you're going to roll out BI. That's cool. So wait, it means they can see how my entire team is performing? Can we postpone this a couple of years? We're not ready for this project.
Yeah. No, let's just say transparency is probably never cited as a reason, but it might sometimes actually be a reason. Right?
So I think that really begs the question, why on earth are people going for BI?
Yeah. So if you look at, what McKinsey would say about this, well, it's about digital transformation.
Yeah.
Digital transformation.
Oh, no, I got it.
Moving on. And then the outcome of that is obviously data-driven decision-making.
Yeah.
That's what this holy grail is about. You want to be using all the data you have to help you make better decisions going forward, right? That's the promise. And if you don't do BI, by the way, what's the step up towards BI? It usually is kind of a dashboarding tool.
Yeah.
And those start at $200 a month and going up to, I don't know, probably $2K a month or something like this.
Yeah.
Then there's a large gap to the $150K all in with BI and kind of scaling up. But that's usually what kind of people are looking for. Ultimately, when you really, really think about, okay, now I see all of that data stuff.
Yeah.
I see all of these things. How is it going to make me or the organization data driven in my decision making? Well, number one, very disappointingly, it comes back to, well, I need a dashboard for my meeting.
Yeah.
Right? So you want to have a meeting either in your commercial team, in your financial team, wherever you want to have a meeting, and you want to pull up some numbers so we kind of create like a ground truth of what's going on. This is what this is about. You want to have a dashboarding tool that shows you some numbers. And then number two, this is reason number one.
Yeah.
And this could be recurring meetings on a weekly basis. So, hey, we have a weekly sales meeting or weekly marketing meeting or whatever it might be. You have those pieces in there and you kind of go through those numbers. The other one could also be quarterly recurring, kind of your QBR meeting, for example. You want to have a QBR dashboard somewhere in Looker where then pick and choose which ones you actually want to build a slide from. Right? Kind of that's how this works. But really then the second reason is you want to figure out if and when something goes wrong and why it's going wrong.
Yeah.
Right? We sometimes call that root cause analysis. And in this case, I want to kind of to ask you, when you were using Looker back then and you saw something was going wrong, right?
Yeah.
First of all, talk to me how you figured out that something was going wrong. And then what did you do about it?
Well, so I'm a weirdo, right? I will open up every conceivable report as the first thing in the morning. I still do it today. I think we've talked about it in previous episodes. So this is the first thing I do. It's just part of my ritual to see how we're performing right now. That's important to me to know. And I've always been wired that way. So for me, it was opening up the Looker dashboard for marketing where you had a number of leads, MQLs, SQLs, opportunities, closed won deals, AR signed, right? Mm-hmm. And in there, we had a actual versus target, right, for the quarter. Mm-hmm. And I would look at two things. I would look at the amount of leads we were passing over to sales and the amount of opportunities. All the closed won and revenue, a lot of it would happen later in the quarter and you have less control. It's still important, don't get me wrong, but that was like the first frontier of numbers I would look at. And then we'd basically see where we're dipping too far below target. And then if we were dipping too far below, in some case I would know, okay, we have this initiative planned. And I would know, no one else, by the way, would know, but I would know we have a webinar, a trade show or something coming up that's going to snap it back. In other cases, we had nothing. And I was like, well, what on earth is happening here? And I had to run through a couple of other tools. I had to go to, well, is something happening on the website? Is because that's where we generate a lot of those leads. Is it paid that's not working as it should right now? Things are changing all the time. Did something happen on the website? Something broke maybe? Or did we get hit by a SEO update from Google? The more advanced stuff I would pursue if there was nothing there would be to look at the composition of the leads. And that's where I would run into trouble because I would have to run to Nico, our data guy, and he was not at his desk. So I had to wait or Slack him and wait for him to get back to me. And then this whole interaction of, hey, can you maybe break this down by segment because we don't have that filter? And a couple of days passes and it's there. And it's like, actually, I also need this other filter.
Yeah.
And
So let me tell you how this played out from my perspective.
Yeah.
Because I also heard the story from Nico back then, complaining about marketing.
Yeah.
Number one was, hey, here's something off on the demo request or whatever
Yeah.
it might be. You go do all your checking, and then you go back like, I don't actually know what's going on. Let's dig into the data itself, right? And you go to Nico, ask him, hey, can you split it by region? Or whatever.
Yeah.
Because, and this is true, when you do, when you have Looker and you have one of those way more expensive Explore licenses, and you're trying to actually create your own look,
Yeah.
good luck to you.
Yeah. No,
Honestly.
I tried copy pasting some of the SQL code and
Yeah.
I was just, no, forget about
So
it.
Anish and Nico and all of these guys that kind of tried to teach me, right? But it just didn't work out. I couldn't, right? So basically kind of ended up taking an existing look, copying it, and then trying to do something with it and hoping, every time I hit enter, hoping that suddenly a graph would appear.
Yeah.
Usually it didn't. And if you wanted to create something from scratch, I would always pick the wrong lead object.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, find me leads, and then pick this one, and then Nico comes like, I can't use that one.
Yeah.
Why is that? It's like, oh, you need to, whatever, right? So what ends up happening is Mikkel go to Nico and then says like, hey, can you split it by region or by market or by, whatever you want to do. Nico rolls his eyes because he's easily triggered. He doesn't want to spend any time on the visualization piece and Looker. He wants to build more cool shit in Snowflake. Forgot about Snowflake, by the way.
No, but he also played the whole, hey, I want to build a long-term solution for this. And it's like, cool, how long is it going to take? Probably a month. It's like, yeah, I need this now.
Yeah. No, but then the frustrating thing is, and this is where he lost his shit, was, a week later, he comes back with a solution, kind of gives you the graph. You look at it for 1 second.
Yeah.
1 second.
Not
and it's
there.
like, no, that was not it.
Yeah.
Now I need the other thing.
Yeah.
Right? Anywho.
But I think there's also the ultimate failure where you then pursue to say, you know what? I'll just export all this stuff into a sheet and do a pivot table.
Yeah.
And then Nico sits crying in the corner real hard. And everybody looks at that license we have, the pipeline tool and all that stuff. Is like, why did we bother?
Yeah.
Why did we bother?
So this is a legitimate story. This happens in businesses all the time.
Yeah.
Right? One of the reasons why we bought Looker, I read the book from Tom Tungish and the Looker founder on data and data-driven stuff.
Yeah.
They were talking about bread lines, a concept from, I don't know, when people were hungry in the Western world and they had to kind of stand in line to get bread. And he was comparing that to people standing in line to get data access.
Yeah.
He was basically saying like, hey, Looker is solving that. There's no bread lines anymore. Well, F you. There's a lot of that still going on. Right?
Promise has not been delivered on.
This is what you want to have.
Yeah.
Right? This is what you want to have from BI. Kind of the promise is you want to have data-driven decision making.
Yeah.
You want to have everything in one spot.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of a follow-up question could have also been like, hey, why did you have to go to check your traffic numbers in Google Analytics? Why isn't it in BI and stuff like that? But it's like, generally speaking, right?
But and another reflection I have is like with these bread lines, when you look at, so we recently did an interview with a gentleman called Sid Kumar, which is also going to air at some point. He had shared from a study from HubSpot and Pavilion, where RevOps spends most of their time. So majority, no surprise, sales. I think that was like 80%. And then marketing was teen, and then something on office management maybe, and CS got like 1%.
Yeah.
So there's also a tilt in where they then spend the time informing decision-making on data, which also just exasperates this whole issue, right? When you think about annual planning, where you also need data, if you spend 80% of your time nailing the sales plan, you're going to miss target.
Yeah. So, we kind of talked a little bit about what's the problem if you don't have it, what's the decision making to get there, and what's the promise that you're actually going to have fulfilled from this thing, right? I honestly also think BI has lots of very positive things to it, right? It has this everything, quote unquote, data in one spot, right? But the question that we wanted to go through today is, why is it still not working? Why people still don't feel like they're suddenly data driven in their decision making? And it's not just my CEO doesn't believe in it and blah. I don't believe in that crap anymore, because every C-level that I talk to They have now grown up in the last 10 years where this is obviously a thing. You're going to use these things, right? But why does it still not work? And, obviously we're going to focus this more from a commercial perspective. And I think this is where the first problem actually arrives. Kind of when you think about the promise, everything data in one spot to enable you to make data-driven decision-making. Well, for a commercial perspective, you don't need everything data in one spot. You need everything commercial on one spot,
go to market.
right? Because whenever I'm kind of talking with folks like, okay, your BI and stuff, how does it work out? And then it's like, well, okay, cool. What are your budget? Do you have a budget in there? It's like, no, I have a spreadsheet for this. What about your hiring plan? I have a spreadsheet for this. What about your OKRs? We have another tool or spreadsheet. I mean, it's like every time, when you touch just some other areas for commercial folks that are not specifically, yes, I'm pulling this from Salesforce.
Yeah.
There's always like, I have this other spreadsheet that tries to do these things.
Yeah.
And then it's a kind of a question, well, if everything should be in this BI piece, but so much of the logic isn't, how can it still be the everything piece, right? And I think to a degree, this also has to do with why it's so difficult to use it as your decision-making tool. Because every time a commercial leader has a question, one out of two things are happening. One is, because of the self-serve issue, they need to talk to someone to look something up for them.
Yeah.
Which is, I think 10, 20 years ago, that was kind of fine. But again, the breed of leaders and the commercial teams growing up now, that they have been there. They have been those people that looked stuff up.
Yeah.
They simply cannot do it with that stuff. It's too technical for them.
And it's also like you have roughly 12 weeks in a quarter. If you have to wait a week to actually get an answer to something, you lost around 8% of your quarter. There. Like,
or you just say, fuck it. I'll just make the call anyway.
Yeah.
I don't care. Yeah. I don't care. So it's like the self-serve piece is kind of really frustrating, right? And then the other one is you have to go outside of the BI piece into another context in order to get to the right understanding, right? So the next thing is also in your drill down on regions. Yeah, Nico now could tell you that you had 16 MQLs in the US and 75 in Europe. But is someone doing better or worse than the other? What was the plan? What is the goal and all of that stuff, right? So these things are actually not part of this, right? Then jumping out, trying to kind of even get into the spreadsheet where some of that data might be questionable already. And then the other thing is those spreadsheets might not all be owned by someone on your team.
Yeah.
So meaning someone sitting somewhere else might be like, no, I'm not going to let you into my, or, well, I need to answer your question, but I'm pretty busy, so I'll answer the question a week from now.
Yeah.
And these things simply add up. There's so much friction that simply adds up for people then just, to a degree, I believe, giving up and being like, well, since this isn't working for me, I need to call a shot here. I need to make a decision. And I will have to be non-data driven because I simply do not have the data to be otherwise, right? And I think this is I think what's frustrating for a bunch of people out there.
Yeah, I think it's also like if you're going to propose something and you don't get the time from the data person to supply, you're not going to make the proposal anyway, right? Yeah. And I think it will also tilt the balance in a negative way to a point where you feel like the data analyst or data scientists, they're the ones who will make the case because they have the data and you don't, right? And that's a really negative dynamic to have.
No, but also when you think about Looker, Tableau, I'm not sure about Power BI, but if you think about those tools, for whom are those tools created? Who is the target audience really for them, right? And the target audience for them is the data guy or girl. Like that's what it is, right? They're building this stuff for them. And that makes absolute product market fit, commercial go-to-market fit sense because at the end of the day, there's going to be a boss somewhere or the board or someone says like, oh, we need to be more data-driven. Or you don't have your shit under control. You need to be more data-driven. You need to have BI. And then who's going to make the decision to purchase? It's not going to be that person because they're like, hey, ultimately, and this is also true, I just need that stuff visualized. I just want to see the data. Who's going to make the decision under the hood, though, is going to be some data person that decides between those, I think, 25,000 BI vendors that are basically out there. So what's your best way to kind of go to market? It's like, well, you need to cater to them. They are the ones that need to buy this, which is also one of the reasons why Looker was so successful, was for their target audience that they successfully built towards. Right?
Yeah. And I think that's also why and we're almost back to the why it sucks part, but it's like, you can build anything you want in there. as long as you have someone to build it for you, because no one on the go-to-market team who aren't in RevOps and understands SQL and all the other code and data lakes and I don't know what frameworks, they have no chance. They have no chance of doing anything in there. And I think that's kind of part of the problem. It's not like you buy a out-of-the-box solution with everything. It doesn't happen.
And I think that's cool, by the way. I think that I think all of that works out. Really, the barriers to entry to actually kind of fulfill the promise, though, from a commercial perspective. And this is also, where I think tools like Datadog and PagerDuty, they're basically kind of BI for developers, right? Yeah. They kind of found the path there. But for commercial, I think the promise is still unfulfilled, actually. It's still unclear how BI is really helping folks on the commercial side to be data-driven, make the right decisions. And I think one other sign that we didn't even talk about, but one other sign is just check how many of your, if you have BI, just check who's logging in.
Yeah.
Just check. And I can tell you, sadly, it's going to be the same people that were already data-driven on the operations side, but it's not going to be the leaders that actually kind of have to, right? It's just not. And I think all of that together kind of, for me, points at a, you could say a sizable opportunity to kind of go in and fix that. I think depending on when we air this, some of those challenges are actually, increasingly so solved by Roblox. So I think there's something interesting that, for all of you it's kind of to think about. But ultimately, I think the problem really with BI and why it sucks for commercial is simply it's not self-serve enough. Yeah. You always need to rely on someone else. And that just makes it extremely hard. And then there's so much context that you have to go outside of the BI tool for, try and pull this in, try and kind of have everything kind of merge in your brain to then get to a data-driven decision, which is making it like basically impossible for people to really use it for that. Right?
That's it. So BI, don't do it.
I mean, there are places where you should do it, but don't get me wrong. It's like, I think we kind of had like an example with an airline business that's basically building the back end of the whole airline on a BI solution. It's a, quote unquote, no-code solution for building software internally. I think that kind of makes sense, but I think for the commercial folks out there that are super pragmatic, I just need to know all the things that are important to me in my life. I think BI is a really difficult solution to work with.
So let's take it home and say thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in. Hit the follow, subscribe, like, whatever button to kind of support the mission here, and have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.